Well, most United States employees work at will, allowing companies to legally terminate them for almost any reason or for no reason at all. The Secure Jobs Act is aimed at protecting workers against unfair and arbitrary firing unless their boss can demonstrate misconduct, unsatisfactory performance, or a genuine economic need to eliminate their position. Joining us now is the sponsor of the bill, the Secure Jobs Act from New York City Council District Number 22, Tiffany Cabán. And Council Member Cabán, thank you so much for joining us and sharing. And as we look at this bill, obviously it's a controversial bill on some fronts, but one that you deem very necessary. Talk to us about why you feel this bill is so necessary.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. And I'd like to think that when it's broken down, it's not controversial at all, right? You mentioned it up top. Here in the United States, we have mostly at will employment, which means that your boss, you can show up to work one day and your boss could fire you for no reason or any reason at all. And the reality is that across the country and here in New York, most people don't have $1,000 to spare in the case of an emergency, a medical emergency, a housing emergency. And so being able to create a process for stability, right? To know that you're going to go to work one day and you're going to go home with that same job. And if you are at risk of losing your employment, you have warning that your employer has done their due diligence and done proper training with you. But it's for me, that sounds like the most basic thing on the planet because right now we have employees that can be fired for speaking out about dangerous conditions, can be fired for discriminatory reasons, and there's not really good recourse. And so this bill, covers that gap. And then the other side of the coin, I will say, to sort of like dispute the idea of it being sort of controversial, is that employers can still terminate employees. It just means that you got to do it the right way, that you have to show that economic or financial hardship, that you have to give, a 2-week warning. The bill incorporates a disciplinary matrix, right? So it actually helps employers along in creating that record and supporting employees where they can, and then terminating where it's appropriate.
Yeah, I want to talk about fast food workers. We understand that they had some, similar situation, but they did able to come across in their case and got some relief there. But when you look at them, and when I talk about fast food, I mean there's tens of thousands of them in 2021 that benefited from a law that actually took effect. How much do you feel that this helps to bolster your legislation and getting it across the finish line?
It absolutely bolsters it, right? Because when that bill was being considered, you had big fast food corporations saying that this is going to put mom and pop shops out of business, that also all kinds of businesses were going to leave the jurisdiction. And those things didn't happen. What fast food workers are finding is that they have the support they need to bring suit where appropriate when they're unfairly fired. None of that flight existed. And I think it's important to know who really fights against these kinds of bills. It's the big corporations, right? It's the Amazons of the world. And so, Amazon, for example, is a corporation and the kind of corporation that fights tooth and nail against just cause protections. And for them to say that the reason is to protect mom and pop shops just doesn't make any sense because they're also the corporations that are killing mom and pop shops right now, right? Like driving them out of business. And what the fast food workers bill has shown is that it doesn't do any of the things that sort of people had fear-mongered around, but has only created more stability for workers.
Yeah. Councilwoman Cabán, when I first started, I started using that word controversial when we were in the lead, talking about this is potentially controversial because you do have some people on the other side of the aisle that are your opponents, and they say, listen, this is too restrictive. It puts, it handcuffs us. We can't get, this is just, well, we'll leave it handcuffed. Talk to me about what do you say to those persons who say, listen, you know what, this is a very restrictive legislation, and we're for some things, but not this.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that, and I think about the small businesses in my neighborhood, right, in District 22, in Astoria, in Woodside, in Jackson Heights, we have some of the best small businesses around. And for 95% of employers, this is going to affect you zero. Why? Because you care about your employees and you do the right thing. And this really is only going to target bad actors who are exploiting workers. And again, we have to balance that need of how many stories. The reason why we introduced this legislation was hearing directly from workers being like, I showed up to work one day, I was in the middle of my shift, and my boss said, don't come back tomorrow. What am I going to do? I have to pay for childcare, I have to pay for my groceries, and not being given that good reason. So there's still ample mechanisms for terminations where it's appropriate, but it injects a level of fairness and financial stability for folks that they need to survive. And so, for the naysayers, if you are a good employer that does things the right way, which is a lot of folks, this is going to affect you zero, but it is going to make the workplace much more fair for folks who really, really need it. And if I could point out the people who are most vulnerable, right, like this is really going to be big for traditionally low wage workers. It's going to be big for women because quite often women that are doing sort of domestic based work and stuff get exploited to higher degrees than other workers. The same with our immigrant neighbors and immigrant workers, the same with Black and Brown workers. We see that those folks bear the brunt of unfair firings and deserve to be protected in the workplace.
Yeah, I want to go back over some of the terms of the Secure Jobs Act. Requires employers to provide 14 days notice and written explanation when terminating an employee. It also prohibits the use of electronic monitoring in discipline and discharge decisions, and also implements a progressive discipline system to give employees the opportunity to receive feedback and improve work performance before being terminated. It then also requires employees to provide a proof of economic hardship, or I should say employers that provide proof of economic hardship before they lay workers off. And for yourself, as the sponsor, talk to us about where we are and where it goes from here.
Well, we have built this beautiful broad coalition. So we have partners that are leading this campaign, from unions to community-based organizations to faith-based leaders. And so it's just this really wide array of folks that are ready to fight really, really hard for this legislation. And I think it's going to be exciting. Part of what we have to do is also just talk to our neighbors about what this legislation means, to your point, so people understand. Because people might honestly already think that, oh, of course I can't be fired for no reason at all. And of course I don't want to be fired for no reason at all. And to make sure that there are mechanisms in place to prevent that from happening. So we're excited about the momentum that we're building. We're getting ready for a big sort of public launch with all of our partners. So hope y'all can check it out, and looking forward to fighting to make the workplace a fairer place for a lot of workers.
Yeah, we've been talking about the Secure Jobs Act, and Tiffany Cabán, who is the New York City Council member of District 22. Councilwoman Cabán, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we will follow this and love to have you back as this continues to go forward.
Thanks so much.
All righty. Well, we want to let you know that if you want more information, you can visit the Councilwoman on her website, I should say on her social media platforms. That would be Twitter at Tiffany_Cabán.